Welcome to a special edition of the Section 247 show. People asked for it, so we're going to give it to you in full force. NFL Draft Wrap-Up Show, uh, building off of our Eagles Wrap-Up Show, which was show number 82. I am once again joined by Brett Halpern, certified by the Scouting Academy. I got it right this time to discuss winners and losers of the draft here and how we think everybody did, general talk over, that kind of stuff. First things first, we are a Sports Talk Philly partner. So be sure to check out Sports Talk Philly, sportstalkphilly.com. As always, our shows are presented by Michael's Glass Company. Scrolling there on the bottom, 215-338-3293. Tell them, in this case, that Mike and Brett sent you. It is, they are still open. They are still a, what do you call it?
Essential business.
That's it, an essential business. Thank you for chiming in there. How are we? How are we making out?
Doing well, Mike. Thank you again for having me. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on the show. Just dealing with quarantine life like the rest of us. So,
yeah, it's hopefully we come out of this sometime soon. Who knows? I don't know.
You know, the problem is that sometimes late at night I'll go on Twitter and you read various articles and you start getting really nervous one way or another. You know, I'm trying to be optimistic, but we shall see.
That's the problem. You got to put down the Twitter, the Reddit.
Yeah.
Unless you're going on, unless you're on Reddit and you go into some of the other feeds, like I don't work here feed, that kind of thing. That's always entertaining one. I stumbled across the front desk feed, which are people in hotels talking about guests. That's a fun one too.
That's an interesting one. Yeah.
But look, that's for another show. That's for the actual big show.
Absolutely.
We're here to talk about the NFL draft. It was a little bit different this year. What were your thoughts on the change of the format? Obviously, we had to change the format for a reason.
Yeah.
Overall presentation, this draft, I think, was 15 million people watched it, and it's various.
The ratings were way up.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah.
My personal opinion was I thought it was really, really well done. Your thoughts?
Yeah. I thought it was well done. I think it was as good as could be.
Sure.
You know, the start of it, I think you had to explain and acknowledge why we're doing the virtual draft. But I think the first 15 minutes got me so depressed that not necessarily depressed because, look, we all know why we're in this situation, but it started on a very somber note. But after that, you know, it picked up. I like the fact that ESPN and NFL Network did a joint broadcast.
Really? I see.
Yeah.
I've always been a fan of the multiple people, the multiple experts, seeing it from different angles. I would always bounce back and forth between the two. I actually found myself watching more of the ABC version,
College Game Day crew. Yeah.
Versus the ESPN NFL Network conglomeration there.
Well, I think that's a great crew. Kirk Herbstreit is exceptional, and those guys always work together. So I think it was far more seamless. I agree with you. In previous years, I preferred separate broadcasts, but given what was going on and the challenges they faced, I thought it made sense to bring Daniel Jeremiah over. I hate Eagles fans, don't hate me, to bring Michael Irvin over and the rest of the NFL Network crew. Did you find it? I don't know if you noticed. If I watched on ESPN, the ESPN guy sounded better. When I watched on NFL Network, Daniel Jeremiah sounded better, and all the ESPN guys sounded, the sound quality was not as good. I don't know if you noticed that.
I actually didn't watch the NFL Network feed of it. I just stuck with ESPN.
Yeah.
Since they were together, I didn't go one way or the other.
Yeah. So that from that part, I thought they did a good job. There was always a delay built in. Did you notice that? You know, they would say, "Oh, well, Daniel, what do you think?" And I felt as if Daniel was coming from Mars. I was like watching The Martian because there was always like a 5-second delay.
Well, I'm going to guess that they were using Microsoft Teams, if I had to think with the National Football League, because Microsoft is obviously a sponsor, and it wasn't guys with TV cameras right in front of them, which is usually how a live interview goes, right? You usually have one guy with the TV camera in his face, another guy with the TV camera in his face. I think they were doing more what you and I are doing, which is almost video conference call, which there's going to be delays. There is
that's true. And I got used to it. It was just something I noticed at first. The thing that I really liked in the end, it was nice to see, except for a few people, and I'll get into that in a moment. It was nice to see the GMs and the coaches around their families. And, to me, one that really hit home, look, everyone, and I know even on our mock draft show, I took a jab at Bill O'Brien. But, when you see the webcast of him and his family, you're reminded he has a son with special needs. And I think it gives a different perspective of what what everyone goes through. You see Mike Zimmer, he's there with his daughters, and you're reminded of the fact that he tragically lost his wife. So I think, that was, it was nice to humanize people. And something that I did notice, when you were seeing people, it definitely, and this was a lot of talk during the hiring season, particularly around Eric Bieniemy, you definitely saw the lack of minority representation. So I think that, moving forward, the Rooney Rule, everything else, that's something that needs to be addressed. But again, it was nice to see people humanized, except for good old Jerry Jones in the yacht, which was just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
it was so over the. It was him. Look, that's his shtick. That's what he is in the yacht. Did you see the one where by the way, do you know who is that lady?
I assume
in the blue dress.
Is it his wife?
Is that his wife? I'm guessing that's his wife.
I'm guessing
when she had to hold the phone for him.
Yeah, it was bad.
But everyone else was.
I'm not sure that he's an actual human being. I mean, he could be a cyborg with skin over it. I don't know. It looks like Skeletor.
That or the guy. Remember the guy in Men in Black when the bug?
No. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So but either way, alien-like. That's the main theme with Jerry Jones.
Who do you think had the best setup of everybody that they showed?
Pretty obvious. Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, I was going to say that. That was nice when it went right to that, and I'm like, man, look at this guy, feet up, hanging out. Just showing a nice looking setup there.
When I saw him, I don't often think of Charlie Sheen. But when I saw him, the first thing that came to mind, winning.
Yeah.
He's doing it right. He had a great setup. Some people just looked. I just liked how some people incorporated their family and the kids were just messing around. And Brian Flores at one point looked like he wanted to throw his kids.
Probably.
Like in the early rounds, but later on he had fun with it. I think because people were nervous in the beginning with all the potential technical glitches. Also, I don't know if you caught Bill O'Brien on the third day. There was a stretch where he looked really pissed off. Yep. Apparently, it's because there was a trade that fell through with the Lions. And I really wish we had heard the audio on that.
Yes, that's cool to me. I really like that they have that. If I were NFL Films, and I'm sure they're smart enough that they've already done this, know that they've had almost like a wiretap. You're going to hear what these guys were saying. Because I would love to see the behind the scenes of this on how it actually worked.
Absolutely.
Some of the interactions.
I think Peter King was embedded with the Patriots and wrote about it in his column, that FMIA column he does. But again, it would be nice to visually see as opposed to just reading about it from another graduate from Ohio University. So, but that's an entirely separate discussion.
Speaking of the Patriots, did Bill Belichick set it up that when they came to him, he had the dog sitting there?
Perhaps.
Or was it just happenstance?
I don't know. Great. The dog looked like he knew everything that was going on, though.
The dog
looked very well prepared.
Yeah, the dog could have drafted, I'm sure, for Belichick, and we would have had the same results. That dog knows more football than probably a lot of people.
It must be interesting. This really could extend to a lot of things, but to be like a pet and be privy to a lot of conversations, that dog probably knows a lot of football.
Absolutely.
It has to sink in somehow.
So I was reading, and I forget where it was. I think it was Bleacher Report. They were talking about Jerry Jones and the yacht, and then they were
Yeah.
talking about Bill Belichick being on an island, drafting from an island.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, where was he? Was he in,
He was in Nantucket.
right? But
Yeah.
the way that they played this whole thing off was like that he was on some island in the middle of the South Pacific somewhere holding this draft. I'm like, oh, he was in
Yeah, that's true.
Massachusetts. I mean, it's like it would be like me going to Brigantine. It's an island, but it's not
That's a
an
good point.
island. It's not like I'm in the middle of the Caribbean. Mind you,
I understand what you're getting at. Yeah,
yeah,
but because it's Bill Belichick, they like to make him look aloof and everything else. I thought it was interesting to see the different setups. Some people just went over the top with 8 screens and wires galore. I felt like I was watching the movie Hackers from 1995. Very good movie, by the way. That's nonetheless. But other people like Belichick had one laptop, I think, like barely had so like it was just I think this is going to force people to rethink how they have done the draft in the past once we no longer have to deal with COVID-19.
One of the guys that went super simple that I loved is Bruce Arians.
Yes.
He looked like he was in retirement down there in Tampa.
Absolutely.
He picked up. He had a laptop out there. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
He had the grill in the background. I'm not sure if it was going or not. It probably was.
Yeah.
He had the hat and the white shorts. I'm like, this guy's living the retired life. This is great.
Well, look, I mean, he got Tom Brady. I'll allude to it. He ended up with a good draft. He's a lot happier these days than he probably was last year with Jameis throwing the ball away all the time. So
we can get to that on the back end of this. We're doing this after kind of everything is settled down with the draft because moves were going to happen. And we'll get into it, but let's talk about it. We're going to do winners and losers, but because this is a Sports Talk Philly presentation, a partnership, we're going to start with the NFC East, and that's what everyone wants to hear about. And you're gonna say the same thing I did. We said it on episode 82, but let's talk about it. Winners of the draft out of the NFC East.
So the clear-cut winner for me were the Dallas Cowboys.
They had a really good draft.
They had a really good draft. I'll get more into it specifically in a moment. If I had to rank,
maybe it was the woman with the dress that was doing the drafting, not Jerry Jones.
Perhaps, I don't know. I mean, look, if CeeDee Lamb falls to you, it's a pretty easy pick. I don't buy the argument it was literally a spite pick towards the Eagles. If you're doing spite picks the way Larry David is doing spite stores, you're not gonna be a very good team. But so the way, if I had to rank the way I had the drafts of the NFC East, it would be the Cowboys 1, Giants 2, Redskins 3, Eagles 4. But I'll explain. Redskins and Eagles, that's almost interchangeable. But
right. I'd agree with you.
There was a clear-cut 1 and a clear-cut 2, and then a precipitous drop to 3 and 4.
Well, let's start with it. Let's talk Dallas.
Yeah,
they are the winner. They might have won. They might get the draft championship for the league as a whole. We'll get that in the next segment. But give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts on what Dallas did. They made themselves better. They clearly had a plan. They executed their plan. People aren't going to want to hear it. We pride ourselves on this program of not being homers. Dallas did really, really well for themselves.
They got impactful players in 6 of their 7 picks. And, that's about as much as you could ask for in a draft. Starting out with CeeDee Lamb, you now have 3 legitimate receiving options. So he's paired now with Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. Plus, I think they've now created a buffer. If in fact they have issues with Amari Cooper after the 2021 season or just want to get rid of him. Because I think CeeDee Lamb, is going to blossom into a legitimate wide receiver 1. So, I mean, that's a problem for everyone in the division. Now, Dak has Zeke in the backfield. He's got 3 legitimate receivers. I like that tight end Jarwin they have. I think he's pretty good. I mean, he's not the upper tier of tight ends, but I think he's serviceable. Even with Witten gone. So that was a great pick. I didn't think he was going to fall that far, and they nailed him. And Yeah, again, it wasn't a spite pick, but I think clearly, I believe if CeeDee Lamb was there, I have to believe the Eagles would have drafted him over Jalen Reagor. We'll talk about what I would have done with the other wide receivers available for the Eagles a little bit later. But CeeDee Lamb is he was my wide receiver two. He was many wide receiver ones for a lot of draft pundits. Just a great pick. And then in the second round, drafting Trevon Diggs, he's a 51st pick. I didn't think he'd get out of the top 40. So that's Stefan's younger brother. His best football is way ahead of him. So this is a guy who right now is doing it based on pure physicality and just his physical traits. Now he's going to get coached up by legitimate coaches, and he's just going to be better. And what does that do? That replaces Byron Jones, who they lost to Miami. So I think that was a great pick. Neville Gallimore, interesting story. Kid came from Canada. Was lightly recruited, then went to a larger high school in Canada. Then his recruitment took off. A very athletic defensive tackle, penetrating. I think he's going to pair excellently with the veterans they signed, Dontari Poe and Gerald McCoy. Then they draft the fourth round was probably their strongest round. They draft a Swiss Army knife in Reggie Robinson, this hybrid defensive back, cornerback safety. So that's another guy who's going to help, fill the void that Byron Jones left. And then you get Tyler Biadasz from Wisconsin, the center. You just drafted the eventual replacement of Travis Fredericks. The guy fell because he had some medical issues. Nothing I think that is career altering. The problem is, given the climate with everything going on in the pandemic, you weren't able to truly evaluate him team to team, which is why he slipped. I don't think he is as good or as strong a prospect as Frederick was coming out, Travis Fredericks, but he is, where Travis Fredericks was right in that he was like a Cesar Ruiz, Travis Fredericks. Biadasz is more like a mid to late second round prospect if healthy. Getting him in the fourth round, that's a great pick.
Right. It's a steal. We talked about it at length in the mock draft show, which you heard exclusively on audio. And hey, by the way, it just happened to show up on YouTube a week after the draft, but I don't know. It's a YouTube.
Better late than never.
Yeah. Big Ten for the most part.
Yeah.
Linemen, it's hard to go wrong. The chances are they are going to have some form of, they're going to contribute in some way.
Absolutely. And look, they have a decent center now, the Cowboys, but this is the guy who, in 4 or 5 years, when you're looking at the Cowboys, he's going to be the starting center. So to get that in the fourth round, that's a great pick. And then, the last impact pick they had was Bradley Anae in the fifth round. This is a guy I had going in the third round. He's not super athletic, but a tough, more of a run-stuffing defensive end, but just a great piece to add along that defensive line. They have a lot of question marks at DM. Bringing back Aldon Smith, Randy Gregory, these are guys that have had a litany of substance abuse issues in the past. Personally, just for, one person to another, I hope that they're able to overcome those. But look, that's a lot of issues that they have to deal with. This is a guy you can plug and play. He's going to be a really good player. Then they drafted a quarterback in the last round, developmental guy. I just wonder if the guy's father is Dominic. His name was Ben DiNucci. So I thought you might.
I saw the same thing. When I saw that draft pick, I was like, "Oh, is he from Pittsburgh? And is he any relation to Dominic DiNucci?" For those who have no idea what we're talking about, it's a wrestling thing. Don't worry about it. Look, the Cowboys hit the draft the way you're supposed to. Not many projects. You have guys that are going to be able to step in and play right away, which is why they had one of the best drafts in the league. You had in the division they were the clear-cut winner. But let's move on. Number 2, you have the New York Giants.
Yeah. So I think you might recall when the Giants drafted Andrew Thomas 4th, I was actually quite frustrated. I think I texted you immediately, like, fire Gettleman.
Yeah.
The pick has grown on me. So as you recall in the mock draft, I had them going tackle. I had them going Jedrick Wills. I understand why they took Andrew Thomas because he was the safer pick. The guy has played left tackle, unlike Jedrick Wills, who has played right tackle at Alabama. And he has, most people will tell you, of the top 4 offensive tackles, he had the highest floor, which is why, look, when you draft an Eric Flowers, when you draft Justin Pugh and all these guys that just don't work out, you need to draft someone who's going to stick. Andrew Thomas will stick. This guy was a captain at Georgia, played as a freshman. And so I don't know if he's going to be a Hall of Famer. It may have been a slight reach at 4, but he's still a good pick. And you know what? I hope he listens to me and a lot of the guys that say, hey, yeah, I thought I had you as the 4th tackle, and gets super pissed off at me and takes that and becomes just an absolute monster. But it immediately makes the passing game better and the running game better. It protects Daniel Jones. Look, Daniel Jones had a fumbling problem. You know how you cure that aside from various skills that Daniel Jones can improve upon? Don't have him hit as much, right? And it's going to happen when you have a guy like Andrew Thomas blocking for you instead of some of the guys that the Giants have had. Then in the second round, I was hoping that Cesar Ruiz was going to drop to the Giants, even in the mock draft we did last week, I had him going in the first round. I was kind of hoping he would slide and that they could just double up and draft a center for the future. They drafted Xavier McKinney, the safety from Alabama. He was my number 1 safety. In Patrick Graham's defense, I think he's going to be able to do everything that's needed of him. He is he excels in man coverage, zone coverage, and can affect the run game. Now it gives the Giants 3 good young safeties. So he's paired with Jabril Peppers, and Julian Love. So I think that was a good pick. The third pick in the third round, the Giants' third pick, it was a 3rd round pick, Matt Pert, the tackle from Connecticut. Bit of a reach, but he'll definitely be one of their starting tackles in a year or 2. He needs to get a lot stronger. But in even by the 3rd round, you're drafting traits. A guy who's 6'7.5" with gigantic wingspan, you can't coach that, right?
Yeah, you can't teach size, man. I mean,
yeah, you can't. Look, I have T-Rex arms. It didn't help me when I played, and guy like that with that kind of wingspan, it helps. So I think that a bit of a reach, but in a few years, it'll be a good pick. They drafted a good slot corner in Darnay Holmes, UCLA, in the 4th round. I actually love their 5th round pick, Shane Lemieux from Oregon. Just a nasty multi-year starter at Oregon. They're going to cross-train him to play center. So if they can get out of him to become the starting center, that's a really good pick. The thing that didn't make sense to me was they kind of went crazy in the 6th and 7th round. They just drafted – they did draft 1 defensive back, but other than that, they just drafted linebackers.
Maybe it was Gettleman's mask. I don't know.
Well, okay. Well, sorry. So we should address the mask. I don't know why people were giving him such a hard time. There was another guy in the room.
Right. And he was immunocompromised.
Yeah, he's had cancer. So, look, I don't like the guy, but, let's keep him safe and alive. He has a family, the worst case scenario, he gets fired next year. I'm okay with that, but he'll still be alive. That's all right. But, at least he put the mask on correctly. Did you see, the governor of Florida?
Yeah. There was some politician that put it on upside down. Yeah. Couldn't figure out how it worked. Didn't realize that.
Look. There are both Republican and Democratic governors, mayors, whatever, who are probably putting that mask on. It has nothing to do with their political affiliation. I just thought it was pretty funny. So they drafted a bunch of linebackers. I don't know if any of them are going to stick. There was one from Penn State who Cam Brown, never really thought he was much of a player, but very long. So again, you're drafting traits. I thought one of the interesting ones, the Giants actually had Mr. Irrelevant, which I always think is pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw that.
By the way, it sucks. He's not going to get a parade. Every other Mr. Irrelevant gets a parade.
Oh, will he get a virtual parade? It won't matter. Maybe they can go send him to watch the NBA games down in Disney. Oh,
well, but the thing is,
Florida's opening up. Come on now. He can go for a parade if he wants. I wouldn't go. You wouldn't get me in a parade, but.
Would you feel awkward having a parade for you as Mr. Irrelevant?
Yeah, you got to embrace it.
Yeah. Well, I guess people probably have no idea who you are anyway. Well, not you, but if you were Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah, and then I would have to try and turn it into some kind of localized TV spot, for like a jeweler or a diner or something. Like he's a giant, so you can pick any New Jersey diner, and become you get a commercial out of it. That's
hang out with Mr. Irrelevant. But anyway, so Mr. Irrelevant was Tay Crowder, a linebacker from Georgia. He actually was a running back in Georgia, and as you well know, this is when with DeAndre Swift and Elijah Holyfield and Michelle and Gurley and Chubb. So they actually switched him over to inside linebacker. So he's a tremendous athlete, but he's only played linebacker for like a year and a half, 2 years. So I think it's going to be tough. It's uphill battle to make the roster. So again, it was like I thought that Gettleman was really nailing the picks up until he just went crazy with linebackers. And I think the Giants need linebackers, but it's very tough to duplicate Pepper Johnson and Carl Banks in the 7th round. They were all first-round picks.
Well, and that's a different game back then too.
Because, absolutely.
15 rounds, and values were different. You said Eagles, Redskins interchangeable. So let's start with Washington. And what are your take on what the Skins did? And down, it was going to be interesting to me to see how it progressed with Rivera in his first year and the dynamics that are the Redskins. What's your take on how Washington did?
So I think if you look at it from one perspective, you could give them a decent grade simply for not screwing up.
Right.
And taking either a corner because they needed one or a tackle and getting the best player in the draft. When you get the best player in the draft, it's got to at least, I guess, give you a baseline of C+. So from that perspective, you got to be happy if you're a Redskin fan. And as I'd mentioned in the mock draft, this guy is a rare talent. He compares favorably to Myles Garrett and Jadeveon.
We're talking about
Chase Young, yes, thank you. But with far less injury concerns, just tremendous upside. This guy's going to be a perennial Pro Bowler. He makes that defensive line super strong. Now, when you look at the rest of the draft, I thought there were some puzzling picks, really, and I don't think they really landed tremendous value in the late rounds. The 3rd round, they got Antonio Gibson, who's like a wide receiver and running back from Memphis. I don't really know if he's particularly great at either. I don't know if he was a 3rd round pick. And the 4th round pick's really interesting. Sadiq Charles, the left tackle from LSU. I don't know if you had heard about him. He had he had a lot of disciplinary issues at LSU and was suspended. Now you're banking on him to replace Trent Williams. So that's a tall order to begin with. If everything else is clean, supposedly numerous teams had him off the board. So that's really risky pick.
That's a Washington type of pick. The thought process now is you have Ron Rivera, who has a little bit of a disciplinarian type of history. You can bring him in and you can harness the kid's shortcomings and make him into the player everyone thought he could be.
Yeah. So another guy that they drafted. Did you see the piece on Antonio Gandy Golden at all from ESPN? He's the kid who he started out as a gymnast. He could do the Rubik's Cube in about 70 seconds.
Was he from Canada? Is he a Canadian kid?
No, he played at Liberties. He did well against Rutgers this year.
Well,
but
that's probably why. Yeah, but so that's a.
Yeah, he's got a great catch radius, but to me, I think they already have that in Palmyra's finest and Calvin Harmon. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. To me, I think it's always good to draft people who complement your current roster as opposed to just bringing on another guy who possesses the same skill sets. They drafted a decent interior offensive lineman in the 5th round, Keith Ishmael. After that, they had a lot of special teams guys, Khalik Hudson, Cameron Curl. Then in the 7th round, again, they drafted another defensive end. The D line is a strong point. You just drafted Chase Young. Again, it's a 7th-round pick. I think it was number 229 in the draft. So the likelihood is you're not drafting a Hall of Famer there, but I just would have allocated the resource elsewhere. So, I mean, this guy, James Smith Williams, DN from North Carolina State, had been pushed down because of injury. Again, decent pick. I would have tried maybe that's when you get a speedster. Maybe that's when you get another running back. I mean, Darius Geis is always hurt. Right. So, just allocation of resources. It didn't make sense to me. So,
allocation of resources. Let's move on to the elephant in the room. The Philadelphia Eagles draft.
Yes.
Look, I get the Jalen Reagor pick from a speed standpoint. My thought as it happened, and we were live as it happened, is they wanted CeeDee Lamb. They were hoping he fell back, and they were going to go that direction. Obviously didn't happen. There's the apparent value of the 2nd-round pick that they didn't want to trade to move up to get Lamb. So there was a bunch of receivers on the board at this point that
there were.
That all made sense in some way.
Yeah.
I don't know that they picked the guy that made complete sense, but that's why you're here. So tell me, what are your thoughts on what the hell the Eagles did? Because I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
So I think it does make, there is some sense as to what the picks were. I think I disagree with the specific selections at certain levels. Jalen Reagor, I disagree. I would not have picked him there. I had him. I had a 2nd-round grade on him. Yes, they are drafting him because they believe he is a Deshaun Jackson style player.
Right.
The thing is, he did not run anywhere near what Deshaun Jackson ran. Now, again, I'm not putting an over-reliance on the 40. You have to look at the film. The guy can create separation, and he's also a very good returner. So he brings that similar to Deshaun Jackson when you have Deshaun Jackson as a returner. But he's just simply, he does not flash that level of speed. Plus, the guy struggles with drops. As compared with, say, a Justin Jefferson, who, again, not overly relying on the 40, but ran a significantly faster 40 time at the combine as compared with Jalen Reagor. So,
plays a different level of competition on Saturday. I mean, college football is so many teams, and everyone talks about the leagues and everything. But look, SEC players are playing with top talent on a regular basis
and facing actual defenses as compared to the Big 12, where defense is optional.
Exactly.
So it was a puzzling pick, not the worst pick in the world, but again, I would have gone differently. And again, it now also given, the gift of hindsight, now knowing that the Eagles have acquired Marquise Goodwin. Marquise Goodwin has Deshaun Jackson's speed.
Right.
I don't think he necessarily has the wiggle that Jackson has, but straight line speed, he's probably even faster than Jackson. The guy was an Olympian. I mean, that's not many of us could say that. So
he can catch a football jumping off the back of an elephant or something like that. I saw the video. Elephant, rhino, I don't know, dinosaur.
Yeah. Was that recent? I'm assuming this is pre-pandemic.
I would think so, but
okay.
But who knows anyway?
Yeah, that's definitely
people are starting to lose their minds.
Yeah, I mean, I guess social distancing. I don't know if it extends to elephants, but that's. I'm not an epidemiologist, so I'm not going to go down that road. So to me, I would have still gone Justin Jefferson. I think he was just a far cleaner route runner. I think he would have, at minimum, I think he provides a better security blanket for Carson Wentz. And so, to me, and Denzel Mims, again, another guy who I had ranked a little higher. He's more in the mold of an Alshon Jeffrey, but he also could have pushed J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. So it was a puzzling pick. I think he could end up being a good player. He has talent. It's just
I would agree.
There were better options, and it was a slight reach. Obviously, that gets us to the second round pick, which is been the talk of the city. Look, so here are some statements I will make. You are a better team. The Philadelphia Eagles are a better team with Jalen Hurts on their roster. I would say generally. I think Jalen Hurts is a good player. He's a good guy to have in your locker room.
Right.
The guy is developed each year. You could see the progression from Alabama to Oklahoma. He became a much better quarterback at Oklahoma. Thanks to Lincoln Riley in that offense. If Carson Wentz goes down, it's good to have a guy of that quality come in. But the end of drafting players is not simply about the acquisition of talent. Sometimes there are messages sent and issues raised when drafting a player. So, as everyone has discussed, what does this say about how the front office thinks and values Carson Wentz? Look, Carson Wentz is a great player, a top quarterback, but he has lingering health issues, but the guy has had issues staying healthy.
He hasn't finished the season.
He has not.
So, I mean, there's statistics on how often he is injured. It's not really as much as people make it out to be, but he hasn't finished the season. Now, I'm on record of saying 2 years ago, after the Eagles won the Super Bowl and the season they lost to the Saints in the playoffs, that the Eagles he would have finished that season if the Eagles were actually in it. For those who don't remember, they were really pretty much out of it. Yeah. They pulled Carson Wentz, and then things fell right within the rest of the conference and the division, and they made a run and ended up as a wild card. But he didn't do it. I mean, that is what it is. This is message, man. This is a message pick.
Yeah. Now, to me, you picked Jalen Hurts at such a high spot in the second round. This is clearly, you're never going to get a great return on him from a trade perspective. So this is clearly, we believe that this guy could be the quarterback. And if Carson Wentz continues to exhibit frailty and is unable to finish seasons, because look, at the end of the day, I agree with you. The percentage of time he's out is not that much, but it's all about when you get hurt and what time you miss. Because at the end of the day, it was not him that beat the Patriots to the Super Bowl. And that's something that will always live with him, and follow him. Yeah, I mean, look, I would guess that if Carson had stayed healthy that season, I think you guys at minimum are still the NFC representatives in the Super Bowl.
There's a similar path
and probably still win, but that is not how it happened. And you had Nick Foles, who was the guy. He was the MVP. So that's the problem. And look, a second round pick is a valuable pick. You could have had an impact linebacker. You could have had an impact corner. You could have drafted alignment. So many ways you could have gone. And instead, it shows, at least at some core level, a distrust in the future viability of Carson Wentz. I think they have faith in him. I just think that it's like, look, this guy can't finish. That's a problem.
Right. Said it on episode 82. I'm a firm believer that in the draft, you always draft a quarterback. It's kind of like recruiting in college. Every recruiting class, you're going to bring a quarterback in. Sometimes it's later rounds, just as a project to see what happens. They catch and it works for you and you move on. But when you're drafting a quarterback in the end of the first, in the second round, and we'll get to some of the other teams that have done this. Yeah, that's a message pick. You're bringing in a guy who you're saying is this guy's going to be a contributor in some fashion in the next couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, look, they're going to bring him in, and I'm sure in the meantime he'll do the Taysom Hill package. Yeah, he's not quite as explosive.
And he's a quarterback. I mean, he can run. I know the stats on him running at Alabama and Oklahoma and how many times he ran. But you're not wasting a second round pick on a gimmick.
No.
It's not a gimmick.
Yeah, this was a pick for 3 years down the line if Carson Wentz can't stay healthy. Right. The thing is, if Carson can stay healthy, now 3 years down the line, you're going to look at this pick and say, okay, well, we have a nice backup. The other thing is, I kind of feel badly for Jalen Hurts.
Absolutely.
This guy was benched in the second half of a national championship game, and for a freshman who had never come in. And to his credit, they let him back against Georgia. He sits and waits his time, replaces Tua in the second half of the SEC championship game the following year, brings him back against Georgia. Then he has his time in Oklahoma, and now he's going to have to sit behind a great quarterback. Is he going to learn? Absolutely. Doug Peterson will coach him up. And I think in 3 or 4 years, Jalen Hurts is going to be a starting quarterback. I don't know if it's for the Eagles. But if it's not for the Eagles, you're not getting a first-round pick for him. At most, you're getting a second-round pick. And you could have used this on a potential starter. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, if you're lucky, right. You have aging. This would have been the spot where I'm looking offensive line. You have aging offensive players. You have to start building. If you have the faith in Carson Wentz that you say you have in the media, here's an opportunity to go get a center, go get a tackle.
Yep.
Start for the next set of guys. But hey, they didn't do that. What are your thoughts on some of the other picks?
So the other picks, Davion Taylor from Colorado. This guy is like a missile. Tremendous athlete, but he's very new to the game.
Really?
Raw. Yeah. I had him in the fourth round, but third, fourth round, that to me is not much of a reach. The thing is they addressed the linebacker position, but again, they didn't address it high enough. Maybe in the second round would have been different. You got like a Malik Harrison. To me, he's a guy who's ready to come in, play right away. Of course, Baltimore gets him. We're going to talk about Baltimore in a little bit. I think Eagles got a lot of players with potential in a year or two. They didn't get a lot of impactful players. That to me is the issue with the draft. I like Kayvon Wallace. I thought, I think even you made the point. You can't go wrong with a safety from Clemson. Definitely not as good as the last safety from Clemson you guys had, but versatile. I kind of viewed him as a Xavier McKinney type that the Giants drafted, slightly less talented, but a good player, and definitely in the fourth round, that was an excellent pick.
He fits the scheme. He fits
definitely
Jim Schwartz scheme. Now, if there's a change in that direction, I don't know. I think this is the kind of guy that chances are you probably see him breaking the starting lineup this year.
Yeah.
Just also considering what the Eagles have going on at safety. But
I think he can play. Yeah. I think that was probably your best pick.
I'd agree.
But again, so looking at it, the late round picks of John Hightower and Quez Watkins. Again, both of these guys are very similar to Jalen Reagor and very, very similar to Marquise Goodwin. There were at those stages of the draft, there were other kinds of receivers you could have drafted to complement what you invested in the first round and what you invested in bringing in Goodwin. Right. You don't just want. I understand that the Chiefs now the trend is to create the track meet, but even within that, you can't simply just have 5 guys all of the same ilk. You need different kinds of receivers to really round out your wide receiver room. And so I thought they could have gone different directions there. I do like the 2 tackles that they drafted, Driscoll and Prince Tega. By the way, the story of Prince Tega is really cool. Coming over from Nigeria. If it weren't for injuries, he is drafted much higher. He's got shorter arms, but I don't think that's like a death knell for his development.
On Driscoll too. That his arms are a little bit short. He's probably going to project down inside the guard. And that's fine, but that's where you pick that kind of guy.
Absolutely, I think both of them are good depth picks along the O line. And then the last guy, Hill, athletic edge rusher, smarter he's definitely in Stanford, so he's smart. Special teams guy, you'll see if he sticks on the roster. But again, so going back to the wide receivers, you drafted the same kind. So you drafted Jalen Reagor, and you just drafted less talented versions of Jalen Reagor as you continue through the draft. Why not draft other types of receivers to mix it up? But by that, I would be remiss to mention I also did like Sean Bradley, the linebacker from Temple. Undersized, not the athlete that Davion. There's not a linebacker I think in this class other than Isaiah Simmons. That's the athlete that Davion Taylor is. But Bradley's a good athlete, and I think in a year or two he actually could be a starter. I'm a lot higher on him than some of the pundits who think he's only a special teams player.
Yeah, so yeah, I know he has a nose for the football. It's going to be interesting to see how he develops size-wise. I peg him right now as kind of a special teams ace.
Yeah, right now.
And I think immediately. I think that's an immediate thing.
Yeah.
If he projects to be a starter, that's fantastic. Local kid, Rancocas Valley, Temple University.
Yep.
Plays a tough brand of football, pun intended.
Yeah. That's very good. That's a good one. By the way, for those that don't know, Rancocas Valley's practice field is not a full 100-yard football field. I would know because I scrimmaged against them. It's an 80-yard field, which presents issues if not all the members of your team don't understand it's not a 100-yard field. But that's another story for another time. So,
all right, let's move on to the league as a whole.
Yes.
Winners and losers of the draft. We're not going to go through everybody here, but we're going to kind of hit on some teams here. Who do you have? Who really impressed you? We talked Dallas already.
Yeah.
Who else impressed you with the draft?
Yeah. So just quickly, as you mentioned, if it were not for the fact that they were in the NFC East, Dallas would be in this conversation. Right. So I'm going to go to the AFC for two of these teams. The Baltimore Ravens. If you look at these, I'm like, I looked at it, I'm like, bang, home run, bang, home run. I mean, Patrick Queen, who I actually had in our mock going to Kansas City, so he had actually fallen further in my mock, which I thought would have been a steal for Kansas City. Baltimore getting him at 28th. I mean, this guy is just, a sideline to sideline linebacker will, really help further entrench the linebackers and provide replacements for CJ Mosley, who I don't think they effectively replaced last year, but just a great pick. Then they had J.K. Dobbins,
or linebacker.
Yeah,
when it was picked, it's like, oh, okay, here it's that whole lineage of Baltimore, and it just a
playmaker. The next pick, for us personally, I was a little disappointed because J.K. Dobbins is coming in to the running back room in Baltimore, which I think could spell trouble for Gus Edwards, who, for those that don't know, was a grad transfer, played very well at Rutgers, which is why Mike and I like him. But J.K. Dobbins is an excellent runner, great between the tackles. He is a Mark Ingram plus 10. He's that level of running back, and I think it just does a great job of increasing the strengths of your team. That running game for them, with obviously starting with Lamar Jackson, but with Ingram and previously with Edwards, it was such a strength that I really like adding a J.K. Dobbins who is far more explosive. And he's going to take some of those traps and the read options. He's just going to bang them for 60 yards, take him to the house. So I thought that was a great pick. Justin Matabuike in the third round, and a super athletic defensive tackle from Texas A&M, a penetrator. A guy like Calais Campbell is really going to bring him along. He doesn't need to come in right away and start, but what a great complementary piece along that defensive line. Because look, their job, I think they clearly win the division. They have to stop. They got to stop the Chiefs. But you have tools now. You added speed with Queen. You have Matabuike. You added all the guys you did in free agency. That's just a great job. They added another receiver, Devin Duvernay, super fast, sort of like Hollywood Brown. I think they take chances on young receivers, and they definitely needed to add. I don't think Miles Boykin showed a ton as a rookie, but and then so then the other pick they had, and I previously mentioned, Malik Harrison. So you have Queen, who's the speed guy. Malik Harrison is the thumper. Right. So when the Chiefs are going to try to run inside, or anyone else from the AFC North, you're going to have Malik Harrison there to greet them, and that's not a fun experience, as many in the Big Ten know. So just such a deep draft. I mean, going down the 6th-round pick, I think it's Proch, the wide receiver from SMU. He was known as having the best hands in the whole class. So it's just you get that kind of value in the 6th round, and they do this every year, which is why if you think about it, I mean they've reimagined that team several times now since they won the Super Bowl with the last hurrah with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, and each time that when you think they're going to have this huge long rebuild, instead they seem to do it in like a year because they nail the draft. So it was to me a home run.
They've seemed to me like the same team since 2000.
Yeah.
Like there's this formula. It's the Ravens formula.
Yeah.
And it works. And there's downtime. There's a little bit of a little downward trend, a flattening of the curve, but then it, in a good way for them, at least. It comes right back up.
Yeah.
I was impressed with what they did. And this is a team that was discussing, well, at least media-wise, firing their head coach.
Yeah, well, he's a good coach. I don't know.
He's a great coach.
Yeah. He is definitely the best Harbaugh coach.
I would agree.
Just
because he's not creepy and not sleeping over anybody's houses.
Yeah.
For a podcast. Who else you have? Who else did you like?
Another team from the AFC I really liked was Denver Broncos. So, when you talk about investing in surrounding someone with weapons, this Denver did it to the nth degree in this draft. So, as many of you know, they drafted Drew Lock in the 2nd round last year, showed a lot of promise. By the way, I'd like to point out for the record, I was correct with this 1st round pick in my mock draft, having Jerry Jeudy go to Alabama. Not go from Alabama, go to the Broncos. Their first 2 picks, they draft Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler. So you have Jeudy, who is the smooth route runner, to pair with Cortland Sutton as the X and the Y. And then you have the KJ. Now, to me, relating this to the Eagles, if you wanted to draft Deshaun Jackson's replacement, if that was your main goal, I would have drafted KJ Hamler. Now, granted, he went 46 as opposed to 21st. I had Jalen Reagor in the 50s. So KJ Hamler to me is more Deshaun Jackson.
And he would have been there. Maybe you have to trade up, but you have that 2nd round pick. You really want him, you trade up. You're not giving up a lot, and that's where you could go back to picking an immediate impact guy in the 1st round.
Yeah. So, but returning to the Broncos, they also got. I'm going to try the last name. Everyone just refers to him as Albert O. It's Albert Okwuegbunam, who is the tight end for Missouri. If it were not for injuries, he would have actually gone much higher, ran like a 4.4. So now you have him and Noah Fant, who they drafted in the 1st round last year. You realize their tight ends are faster than most wide receiver duos in the league. So, I mean, they just drafted speed. They drafted wide receivers. To me, it's a great draft, and you're surrounding Drew Lock with weapons. You got Melvin Gordon in the offseason. Then they also drafted Lloyd Cushenberry in the 3rd round, who I had as the 2nd-rated center. So you're going to protect Drew Lock. Yep. It made you go down and it made sense. There's a plan. Literally, it's like they're telling a story with their picks, and you get it. It's just logical. I mean, even a 6th round pick, Natane Muti from Fresno State. I'm always, I think just to get strength and power, I think he was the number 1 bench press guy at the combine, but just a nasty player. He's had some injury issues, but again, after a year, it'll be okay. You've solidified the interior of that offensive line, and you just got tremendous weapons. And I didn't really go into it. Cortland Sutton is a legitimate wide receiver 1 and an ascending player. Going to be a Pro Bowler. I think by the end of next year or whenever the next full season will be, he is going to be considered a top 10 wide receiver. So to add those kinds of weapons, in addition to a Cushenberry, and to solidify that offensive line, sometimes you got to go all in on weapons, and they did. And I really thought it was a great move.
Anybody else in the AFC stand out to you as winners?
Those were my main 2. I had in the NFC.
Yeah,
I
from your
had NFC. I had. I thought the Vikings did a great job. They drafted. So of course they were the draft. They were the pick right after the Eagles, and they benefited most from the Jalen
Yeah,
Rager pick.
yeah.
You got Justin Jefferson, who I liked a lot more, and I think also makes a lot of sense in the Minnesota offense. Then they drafted Jeff Gladney. So I wanted to ask you. I had Gladney going with their first round pick because he goes for this because Minnesota took him with the second of these round picks.
Does he count?
How much credit do I get? Like
I'll give you a 50% there. You got the team
I'm
right.
Like a semi-genius.
Right. It's 70%.
Okay. All right, not bad. I'll so I can semi gloat with that.
Yeah, you can say that. You got to
okay.
pick. So why that is a 3/4 correct. Like when you get one of those math tests in high school and you're like, how did I score a 61.5? I'm glad I did. I passed, but
no. That's about what my score was in math.
Yeah,
but anyways, so
I'm doing math now, and I'm confused as can be. But again,
they have all those new methods by multiplying. I've seen.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, I've heard that's quite an issue. But they drafted Ezra Cleveland, an athletic tackle for Boise State, which for certain team, I think he fit the zone scheme perfectly for what they're doing. With other teams, Ezra Cleveland really didn't make much sense. Cam Dancer is a really nice cornerback from Mississippi State. James Lynch is a really nice defensive tackle from Baylor. It's just a lot of good picks and even some really good value. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention in the 5th round, they drafted Cherry Hill's finest with Harrison Hand.
I'm glad that Harrison Hand gets to wear purple and white again.
That's a good point.
It'll look a good point. It looked well. And look, he's a good player. Little.
Yeah.
It's one of those picks in the 5th round that it's going to work. It might not, but it is what it is.
Look, I'm going to make a prediction, and we could return to it come October, November, again, whenever the season is played. Not only is he making the roster, I think he is going to contribute both on special teams as well as a cornerback. I like his game. I think he's a good player.
He's a good player, good kid.
Yeah. So I'm happy for him. Just another brief one. In general, I'd like to say I like the Detroit Lions draft. If you had to ask me, it was a good draft. But so I thought they had my favorite round of anyone. So they had 2 picks in the 3rd round. They drafted Julian Okwara from Notre Dame. A, he's a good player. B, I like the pick because he's sitting there with his brother, Romeo Okwara, who's on the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, that was
kind of one of those feel-good moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then obviously there's, not those may not know, their 2nd, 3rd round pick was Jonah Jackson, the guard from Ohio State, formerly of Rutgers, who I'd mentioned him as an under the radar player. Mm-hmm. So I was really happy that he went, in the 3rd round. I think, again, it's weird how there's the quasi Rutgers to New England coaches connection. It's a little bit more tenuous here because he's Ohio State and it's going to Detroit, but there's still, look, he's going to start for them. I think he's going to have a nice career, and I wish him the best of luck. Also realize his agent is Billy Connolly, who I went to law school with. So he has excellent representation. So, all around surrounded by good people. He's a good guy. I'm happy for him. So that was my favorite round. It was a feel good moment plus a personal favorite pick. So,
what teams surprised you in a bad way in this draft, and are your emphatically losers of this draft that you're saying what just happened here?
So I think without question there was one that was just head and shoulders above the rest, and that's the Green Bay Packers. So I think moving forward, potentially in 5 years from now, people won't even care about the 2nd through 7th round picks. Mm-hmm. Jordan Love could be the guy moving forward. So maybe in the end, it will be a good draft. The thing is, Aaron Rodgers still has several good years left. Yep. And you have not surrounded him with and you didn't draft a wide receiver.
Nope.
Did you see the stat regarding that he's only thrown one touchdown pass to a
Sure.
first round pick?
Yeah, craziness.
Have you figured out who it is?
Wasn't it? It wasn't Antonio Freeman. Was it? Was it someone?
I guessed it was Eddie Lacy, the running back.
Oh, I don't know. Who is it? Do you know?
I didn't know. No. Well, maybe the listeners will,
let us know
in the comments and let us know. So I did not. I thought maybe you knew. So sorry for putting you on the spot there.
No,
either way, it's just a ridiculous stat that not all.
Antonio Freeman. How long has Antonio Freeman been gone? And Aaron Rodgers is throwing. I don't think that happened.
That may not have happened. It's also not Sterling. And by the way, it's not Sterling Sharp.
Yeah, I just dated myself by 25 years, just like that. I completely forgot that he hasn't played in ages.
It's okay. Look, you didn't say Don Hudson, so it's really not. It's not that bad. But yeah. So look, the Jordan Love pick in and of itself is controversial. It could very well, just like the Aaron Rodgers pick, set them up for future success. But again, I think you are hurting the window that right now, and they have a definitive and viable window to compete right now. This team was a 13-3, went to the NFC Championship game. Now, I think everyone would probably agree it was a soft 13-3, not the greatest team, but hey, when you get to the NFC Championship game, you're a few bounces away from the Super Bowl, and you're a few bounces away from holding the trophy. So to not surround him with any more weapons, to me, that was just a gigantic mistake. And then not only did you do that, if you look at it, they didn't even draft impact players with those picks. AJ Dillon was not a second round pick. Hey, this guy is a big, bulldozing, bruising kind of in between the tack. He's like a less talented Eddie Lacy, frankly.
Right.
But they already have two good running backs. The running game, frankly, was really good. I don't necessarily know that AJ Dillon, adding him to the room as compared to, say, when the Baltimore bringing in J.K. Dobbins, that's upgrading the room. AJ Dillon, just frankly, I mean, he's just interfering. He's interfering with the catering line. I mean, he's just a big boy. So, he's definitely going to enjoy a lot of the, the smoked brats and all that stuff up there. But there's no impact player. They drafted a tight end from Cincinnati who I had in the 6th round, in the 3rd round. They had a linebacker from Minnesota. They did draft John Runyon from Michigan. Did you hear the story that he hung up on them?
Hung up, yeah.
Apparently, he must have had issues on the farm.
Yeah. He has a llama. Good for him. I'm gonna get a llama. I'm gonna put a llama in my backyard.
So, but again, they drafted 2 guards in the center, and if you were to ask me, that offensive line is aging. But where it's aging is, frankly, on the edges. Bakhtiari is an excellent tackle, but he's getting older. And Billy Wilson, the other tackle, to me, I think you could have upgraded there. So, again, I don't understand the plan. They just seem to get developmental players in random positions, and then towards the end of the draft decided that we're going to get depth along the interior offensive line. You could have drafted, even if you had drafted dynamic players in areas of strength, I'd have been happier with it. But they just random depth players at positions that weren't, necessarily their weakness.
Right.
So I don't get it. It was by far the worst draft to me. And there wasn't even so Eagles fans who were feeling bad about their draft. The Packers had the worst draft by far, and there's not even a close second. To me, I would have taken the Eagles draft, every year for the next 10 years as compared to this. It was just, to me, it was just a trashy draft. So
let's go on to a couple of moves that have been made after the draft here. Some notable additions, subtractions. Jameis Winston looks like he is, I don't know if it's official yet, but he's going to sign with the Saints as a backup. I like that move from his perspective. What is your take on that?
I think that's a good move. I think he clearly needs to learn the position more, and that's a place where he'll get coached up. And for a team that's that talented, if Breeze goes down, I think Winston has enough talent. Look, Yeah, he threw 30 interceptions. He also threw 30 touchdowns. He has enough talent, I believe, to at least steady the ship if Breeze goes out for any period of time next year. So to me, it makes sense all around. I don't think he's their long term option, but it's a good investment, a good insurance policy, and for him, it's a good investment of time to really learn the craft.
Agreed.
So yeah.
Andy Dalton is officially no longer a Bengal. He is cut. He is gone at his Joe Burrow era. There's been a lot of talk that he ends up in New England.
Yeah.
What is your take there?
To me, I think I'd even briefly mentioned that during the mock draft show. This would just make so much sense. I think Andy Dalton still has a lot left in the tank, and I think it would allow Jared Stidham, who the Patriots really do believe in, to continue to learn from a seasoned veteran. Like Andy Dalton is never going to wow you, but he doesn't make mistakes.
He's a good quarterback.
And he's a good quarterback. And look, when you have a good defense, sometimes all you need is a good quarterback to win. And I think it would make sense to sign him to maybe like a 2-year deal, something along those lines. I don't think he's going to have an outrageous price tag, so that's definitely what I would do. As compared, even though Cam Newton is still out there, but there's injury concerns.
Where does he end up?
I don't know. For a while, I thought the Chargers, but the Chargers are not going to bring him now that they have Herbert and Tyrod Taylor. I don't know. Look, if I were him now, I would wait until whenever the season starts, get healthy, continue to train, and there might be an injury, and at some point, some team's going to get desperate. It's going to even drive up the value. Think about Jameis Winston is only getting $5 million.
True.
So, I mean, if you were to wait till the third week, preseason training camp, someone goes down, I think it probably doubles the value. You bring him in, you get $10 million. So that to me is the play. Because right now, I don't see a definitive landing spot.
It'll be interesting times, and we'll talk about that for our preview show whenever that actually occurs, because at this point, I don't know. Be sure to check us out Tuesday nights on the big show, Tuesdays, 9 o'clock, Facebook, YouTube, right here on YouTube, Twitter. Follow the show at SEC247 Show. Brett, as always, thank you for your expertise. Thank you for coming on. And I swear to God, this one will be up on YouTube before you know.
Thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure as always. Honor to be on the show.